Lopes fans, welcome in. My name is Brennan Williams, and this is Go Lopes Radio. We are coming to you live after GCU goes on the road to Laramie and beats Wyoming 82-70. Their first ever Mountain West game. They come away with their first ever Mountain West win. I would say their best win of the season. And guys, they get that first road win of the season, something they are going to have to do a whole lot more of as conference play approaches. But GCU comes away with the big win, 82-70. Quick show for you guys today. We are going to do a game recap, talk about what we saw out there today. We are going to go over the three keys I had to the game pregame and see how the Lopes did. Guys, they did fantastic on all three things. And then we're going to talk about some things we liked and didn't like. And it is going to be really quick, guys, because we don't have any things we didn't like from that game today. So, guys, let's just get right into it. Let's do a little game recap. And, not a lot to talk about here. I think a lot of buildup for this one. We talked about how big of a game this was for GCU's season. I don't want to say a fork in the road or, try to put too much weight onto one single game in a 30-game season. But, man, this one felt really big. And holy smokes, did GCU come out ready to go. Guys, they didn't even let Wyoming linger, hang around, kind of see if they could build any momentum because GCU came out of the gates ready to go. Listen, this Wyoming team before the game, it's kind of unfair to say. I thought they were a little bit of smoke and mirrors. They used a lot of depth. They used a lot of guys. They were running up and down. They played a lot of games at home. They did play Texas Tech really good. And obviously Texas Tech's a really fantastic basketball team. So a good result there for them. But I don't know. We'll see how this Wyoming team checks out. But guys, there's no other way to get around it. GCU went into Laramie, won the game. No excuses for Wyoming. A really impressive win. The Lopes went out and got it. And like I said, they didn't even let Wyoming linger or hang around. After GCU took a 13-3 lead early on in this game, Wyoming never got within single digits. So listen, they had a few moments where they had a little bit of momentum. They made one of their few threes they made. They get an and one. The crowd got into it a few times in the second half. And even though Wyoming outscored GCU by 7 in the second half, kind of similar to their game against Coastal Carolina, like I said, they never got within single digits. Watching and just kind of a little bit of an eye test, it didn't feel like Wyoming was really threatening to win that game. They just never could get enough momentum, enough stops into buckets, and that's a credit to GCU and what they did. So a really, really good win on the road, guys. They were led by Mekhi Williams, who continues to kind of impress. We've talked about throughout the season, maybe even in some games that they lost, that Mekhi looked really confident. He was 6 of 9 from the field, 20 points, 7 of 9 from the free throw line. So he's getting to the line. So, we love that, the aggressiveness there. Jaden Henley also had 18 points. Another really good game for him. Just, classic Jaden Henley game, really aggressive, really assertive, trying to get to the rim. He was, like I said, 6 for 9 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. That feels noteworthy. 4-7 from the free throw line. So a little bit of opportunity to improve there, and had 4 turnovers, but 18 points for him. Nana was fantastic. This was when, we talked about in the offseason what Nana could be, and kind of the Nana special. This was totally it. He was so good, I thought, on, both ends of the floor. I thought he had a few 5-second counts when inbounding the ball in the press, but didn't seem to matter. Obviously, those didn't get called. But he has 15 points, 6 rebounds, doing all sorts of little things. And I felt like he just had a massive impact on the game. Outside of that, guys, it was just kind of a group effort. GCU did play a lot of guys. I think that maybe had a little bit to do with the elevation, which I know was talked about quite a bit. But GCU goes into Laramie, and no other way to get around it, guys. They controlled the game. From start to finish, really impressive effort from them. Even, like I said, as guys came in off the bench, the energy, momentum didn't seem to fade at all. Guys came in, they were ready to go. A few blips along the way, but guys, it's college basketball. You're not going to play a perfect game. And GCU goes on the road as 2.5-point dogs, I think is what it closed out. And they win by 12. So massive credit to this GCU team. Let's talk about our 3 keys. We put out 3 things in our game day video, which we're going to, like I said, try to make a little bit more of a habit of launching those morning of a big game. And here's the first one. We talked about Wyoming. They've had a ton of success on the offensive boards. In GCU, they're third in the nation in defensive rebounding. Those are two things that are going to be clashing. And how did it play out in this game? Well, guys, Wyoming, I got to be honest, they did have 11 offensive rebounds, 15 second chance points. So it's kind of tough to grade this out. But if you isolate it, sure, there's room for improvement. GCU could have been a little bit better in this area. But guys, with as many threes as Wyoming took and they missed, which we're going to talk about in just a second, to only give up 11 offensive rebounds, especially, like I said, for the amount of shots, not just from three, but in general, Wyoming missed. I call this a massive win. And it never felt like on those offensive rebounds, they were the ones that, were kind of a kick to the stomach, if you will, right? Wyoming never got that momentum going, in their favor. And yeah, they got a few offensive rebounds, but the ones that kill you are when they get their offensive rebounds and, they turn into a three and then a stop. And, maybe they get 1-2 possessions later that turns into an and one. GCU never let that become a problem. Again, the 11 offensive rebounds for Wyoming, they're really good at that. Credit to them. But I think, GCU can clean that up. But I'm going to give them a pass. All things considered, Wyoming brings a lot of things to the table. And they do offensive rebound well. And I think, GCU contained them, I'll just say, on that end. And they were able to beat them in other areas. So I'm going to give them a massive pass, guys. Credit to the Lopes, for never letting that kind of get out of control, especially with the amount of shots Wyoming missed. And that takes us to the 3-point variance, which was our second point. This one was going to be really big. Now, GCU, I'm not going to say they blew everybody's doors off with how they shot the three. And, coming in, they hadn't been doing it well. And Wyoming had some success shooting the three. I thought there was going to be a little bit of a regression to the mean on both sides and that maybe these two teams could meet in the middle a little bit. Guys, it was brutal. GCU, listen, 7 of 18. That is fantastic. If you're the Lopes, 7 of 18 from three. We've talked about their ability to win the game in other areas. We talked about the defensive rebounding, the defense improving, which we're also going to talk about in a sec, but 7 of 18 from three is going to be okay. And here's the thing, guys. Caleb Shaw was 2 of 6. He had some really good looks. I believe he started 0 for 3. He made some later in the game, some really crucial ones. I thought he had some really good looks. So in theory, you give those looks to Caleb Shaw again. I think he makes a few more of those. So 7 of 18, that will work. And you know what else will work is holding Wyoming to 3 of 26 from 3-point land. Watching it, I thought Wyoming, gosh, man, they just kept shooting. And they kept shooting, and they kind of hoped that eventually they would start making some. They never did. They missed some open ones. And listen, guys, that's college basketball. We're not going to take the credit away from GCU because Wyoming missed some wide open ones. That's how this game works. But I also thought GCU did a really good job. They made life really hard, especially on their main scorers. They were in them, being physical. They have so many different options to provide. Brian Moore Jr., even, who I know he had some foul trouble, but listen, he was being physical. I thought he was really incredible, especially, he's not the biggest guy, but when you can kind of offset him, his bulldog mentality with a 6'7" guard like Jaden Henley, that is a scorer's nightmare, in my opinion, to have to kind of go back and forth trying to score and get any sort of rhythm on those two guys. And I thought, as a team, GCU did a really fantastic job guarding the 3-point line. Like I said, Wyoming, they missed some, without a doubt, but credit to the Lopes for, battling and fighting on the defensive end and guarding the 3-point line well. And they finished plus 12 in 3-point variance. Like I said before the game, if GCU can just, finish -6, even -9 maybe would be okay. Not letting Wyoming get too much behind the arc. GCU finishes plus 12. They win the 3-point margin by 4 threes. And yeah, if you're Wyoming, you're not going to win that game if you shoot 3 of 26. Really, you're not going to win any college basketball game if you're 3 for 26 from three. It's going to be really hard. So, credit to the Lopes on the defensive end of what they did there. And Wyoming just didn't make some shots, but that's how it works, guys. I thought Wyoming was maybe due for a little bit of regression from that end. And obviously, I thought GCU could do a little bit better job guarding the three as well. And that takes us, guys, to our final point, which is something we've been just keeping a little bit of an eye on since that Utah game, is the defense is rounding into form. Listen, the offense, we know it's like I mentioned pregame, it's been a little painful at times. A lot of missed threes, a lot of holding the ball to the end of the shot clock, and some bad shots being taken. Some guys taking some shots maybe they shouldn't take, and lots of room to improve on the offensive end. But Bryce Drew, we know he wants to guard. He's not a traditional kind of get everything to the middle and block all the shots with some, Anthony Davis or Magoon Guaf sort of guy. They just want to guard tough on the perimeter, make life really hard. GCU has the personnel for it, as we talked about earlier, with Brian Moore, Caleb Shaw, Jaden Henley, those sorts of guys. Even Dusty Stromer at times has shown some flashes, and they certainly did that tonight. Another fantastic game on the defensive end, 26 first half points for Wyoming. By my math, guys, that is the lowest scoring half of Wyoming's season. So, again, I'm not big into coincidences when it comes to college basketball. That's GCU and their effort, and they did a fantastic job on that end, and we're starting to see this group trend. Oklahoma State, a little tiny bit of a step backwards, but I don't think they lost themselves in that game. I don't think they, I don't want to say embarrassed themselves, but I thought they did okay. They fought and they played some unique lineups, and that led to maybe some of the deficiencies on that end. But I thought we saw some of that carryover from the last 5 games. And I think if you're GCU, you're looking at Mountain West play and you're saying, okay, if we can bring this to the table on the defensive end, and that's just their floor, and you can try to piece something together offensively. They played, pretty well offensively, I thought, today. Had some really good spurts and some kind of slower moments. But if you can just bring that intensity, that level of execution on the defensive end, you can start to piece something together offensively. And I think that group might come together a little bit. So really impressive to see the Lopes meet kind of their expectation, Coach Drew's expectation on that end of the floor, and execute on the road against a team that's, like I said, been a mid-major darling. Wyoming has been, just a really kind of dynamic offense with a ton of guards. And GCU, I think, really passed their first kind of guard-heavy test, if you will. Youngstown, St. Louis, Oklahoma State, all games they didn't win, maybe didn't look great in at times. So, really good job by GCU. And I was looking at some quotes from Bryce after the game, and he talked about, the amount of preparation for this game. They obviously had all week. So, that's, obviously an added extra bonus. They're not going to have that come, regular conference play. It's going to be 2 games a week. They had all week, and he talked about how locked in they were, how impressed he was during practice, and it seems to have paid off. And hopefully this is something we can see them just continually carry over, especially into kind of the day in, day out grind of conference play. So I gave them a pass on all 3 guys. Wyoming never really, I guess, kind of affected the game with their offensive rebounding. They did a pretty good job on that end, but I thought GCU contained them. You talk about GCU, they win the 3-point battle. And then obviously GCU's defense, something that's been trending. They brought it on the road. It always travels, guys. We know that defense always travels, and they did a really good job on that end and made life really, really tough on Wyoming. So guys, let's get to our what we liked and what we didn't like. And I'm just going to be honest here, guys. I have one thing, only one that I liked, and nothing that I didn't like. I don't think we can get too picky right now. Road game, non-conference game, or, you got a non-conference game after. You've got Christmas. It's this weird time in the schedule. Maybe your toughest road trip of the year. Obviously, lots of talk about the elevation, this and that. Guys, I got to be honest. GCU won. That's the one thing that I liked. And I've been super honest throughout this season, I feel like. And I've said winning isn't an accident. It doesn't just kind of happen in college basketball. I think college football is a really kind of interesting thing to look at when you compare, the 2 sports. College basketball, you have so many games. You can slip up on one night, not have it. In college football, right, it's you only get kind of 12 opportunities, right, to really kind of impose your will, and you've got to execute, and it's meticulous. You can't let one game even kind of get away from you. And I think as GCU heads into a new chapter, as they head into the Mountain West Conference, it's going to be a lot more like college football. You cannot let one game slip away. You lose the wrong game, and you are going to be behind the 8 ball. I thought GCU prepared well for this, and they won. I was tough on them after Youngstown. I think I even used the word embarrassing. And I think, Bryce was, I feel like, right there with his comments as well, and just calling out this team. St. Louis was really bad Like I was there in person. It was really bad. And if we're going to say, hey, they weren't ready to win those games, you can maybe even talk a little bit about Oklahoma State if you want, and Iowa, whatever it may be. And you can say they did not win those games. You're going to be tough on them. That also, there's two sides to that coin. That means if losing isn't an accident, winning also not an accident. I thought GCU showed up ready to go. They won this game. It wasn't, the elevation, the travel, and Christmas coming up, all those things we've talked about. There's so many kind of built-in excuses. You got to come back home and play Monday against such a unique college basketball team, or maybe they're looking forward to the 9-10 days they have off after their game on Monday. Nope. They just won. And it's not an accident. They controlled the game from the get-go. They were locked in. They were focused. And I know there's kind of maybe some little things you could look at and say we need to improve, or this was really great. But I think just the one thing I like, guys, is this team showed up ready to go in a really big game, and they won. And they have not been able to get a ton of really good wins this season. The Utah win was, okay, a Power 5 team, sure. Not a really good one, if I'm going to be honest, guys. And this Wyoming team, like I said, had been a darling. And GCU just came in focused, ready to go, and got the win. Hard stop. And that's what I like, is that this team came in, they got the win. There wasn't an excuse. There wasn't, Youngstown's a really good team, and they kind of surprised us, all the threes they made. They can be a tournament team, and St. Louis were on the road and stuff. Nope. They went on the road and they won the game. And to me, that is the one thing I liked and was really impressed. And I think if you're a GCU fan, you're saying, here we go. Is this team getting ready for a really big stretch run? Obviously, non-conference maybe didn't go their way, but this team is slowly rounding into form. The defense, guys are getting a little more comfortable and improving, and they come out, and I think we saw, a lot different team in Laramie that get the job done. And man, it was good to watch. It was really good to watch. And even, like I said, that whole second half, Wyoming, sure, they won the second half by 7, but it never felt like they were threatening to win that game. And GCU, it was Mackay, just like his timely buckets. He had a really big 3. I thought he just had such timely buckets to stop Wyoming's momentum. FA, he had a few more of those, just holding guys off as guys drive to the rim, holding his defender off to get a wide open layup. And it's just little stuff like that that adds up throughout a game. And they did it. GCU is 1-0. And to me, that's a credit to the staff, the players. Massive win. And GCU 1-0 in Mountain West Conference play. That's all that matters. And now they get to move on to Monday, a non-conference game, obviously, to finish it out. And then they can really start to get dialed for conference play here, kind of the day in, day out conference play. But that's it, guys. Really good win for GCU. Like I said, 1-0 in the Mountain West, their first ever Mountain West game. Road conference wins are always a massive plus, guys. You have to remember that. This is not the WAC. This is a totally different beast. These are really good college basketball teams. There's going to be really tough environments. And so if you get a road conference win, that is always a win. Always a really good thing if you're a team. So, yeah, really good job by the Lopes. And guys, no other results right now to talk about. Colorado State hosted Utah State in what we thought was going to be a really good game really early in the day before GCU. And wow, Utah State flexes its muscles, wins by 40. And whoa, it was just felt like a little bit of a statement. Colorado State, another team, much like Wyoming, that has really impressed early on, and Utah State said nope. There was a reason that we were picked second in the Mountain West, and so really good win for Utah State, and they looked really good. So they're looking really tough. A few other results. Make sure you keep your eye on them in the Mountain West. Obviously, San Diego State with a non-con game against the number 1 team in the country. Really, hopefully they can. I don't know, maybe sneak away a win, and that'd be really big for the conference. So we'll see. But GCU back at home Monday, a quick turnaround, IU Indy. I'll have another one of these game day videos, 4 or 5 minutes long to talk about IU Indy, get you ready for the game on Monday, their final non-con of the season. Last chance for GCU to kind of work some of those things out, right? We've talked about the defense trending. Maybe, offensively they can start to see, the ball go in the basket, make a few more threes, and see guys, especially like FA, continue to take steps forward. So another really good opportunity. This group cannot can absolutely not mail it in these games. These are really, really valuable opportunities as they get ready for conference play. So, guys, that's it. Everybody, have a Merry Christmas. We'll have a video on Monday for IU Indy to preview that game, and then a little bit of a break. So we hope you guys enjoy your Christmas, have a good time, and we'll see you guys Monday. Cheers.